Hello, we are looking the factors which enabled globalization. In the earlier part, we have seen how the technology supported or enabled the globalization in the world. Now, the next factor, how it made changes or support to the globalization that we will see in this part. The liberalization of foreign trade and foreign investment policy. Liberalization. This term is not new to you people. Since French Revolution, you are listening, learning about this term. In the first chapter of history, also you have studied the different meaning of the liberalization. So in the field of economics, liberalization means freedom for the trade and business. That is the same here in this way also the liberalization of foreign trade and foreign investment policy. The meaning of liberalization is here the freedom for the businesses that done by the foreign companies and investment policies. How it enabled the globalization we will see here. The example is here given about the China. In one example we have seen how the Chinese toys are flooded in the Indian market. What are the reasons for it? Why these toys are flooded in the Indian market? Because the Indian government's policy about the foreign trade. It works in the way imposing the taxes on the import and export. When there are less taxes on the import, that time foreign goods being available are flooding in the local market. When import is a import tax is a more high, that time automatically the prices of the goods increases and people don't like to buy these goods. So automatically the foreign goods become rare in the local market. So about Chinese toys also it is given in this example how it worked here. With the example of China, we have seen how the foreign goods are flooded in the Indian market. With this example, what we are studying, we will look here the trade barrier. What is the trade barrier? Tax on import is an example of the trade barrier. When high taxes are there on the import, that become trade barrier. When these import taxes are low, easily foreign traders can bring material in the local market. It is called a barrier. It is called barrier because it is one kind of obstacle. That is why it is called barrier. Because some restrictions has been set up. Due to it, the restrictions are becoming. Government can use trade barriers to increase, decrease foreign trade and decide what kind of goods and how much of each should come into country. The government can decide for the trade barriers to increase taxes on which goods and decrease taxes on which goods. And what is the quantity also? If in a local market the local production is high, that time it is needing to impose high taxes on the import to support local businessmen. Since 8th standard we are studying, government should support the local traders, businessmen. So to support it, there is a one way to impose high taxes on the import and decrease export taxes. So when export taxes are low, that time the local producers can sell the production in other countries. So in this way, the taxes on the import and export works as a trade barrier, and government decides on which goods it could be imports or on which not. It always government always gives favor to the local production. We are looking about the trade barrier. The Indian government changed its policy about the trade barrier when we will see it. The Indian government after independence had put barriers to foreign trade and foreign investment. After independence, it was needing to support the local producers. That is why Indian government put barriers on the foreign trade and foreign goods in the local market. The Indian government after independence had put barriers after the independence for the foreign goods and foreign investment. This was considered necessary to protect the producers within a country from foreign competition. The economical situation of country was not good when India got independence. So it was needing to protect the local businessmen, more local trader or local producers. That is why there was restrictions for the foreign goods and investment in the country. To avoid the competition from the foreign goods. Industries were just coming up in the 1950s and 1960s. It was starting of the industries in the decade of 1950s and 1960s, and competition from imports at that stage would not allowed. So in this way, the Indian government not allowing other countries or the foreign investment or foreign trade in the country, it was to avoid the competition for the local producers. Thus, India allowed industries to come up and allowed imports. That goods were only imported which were not more produced in the country. That kind of things were imported which were not produced in the country, such as machinery, fertilizer, petroleum, etc. That all developed countries during the early stages of development have given protection to domestic producers through a variety of means. So it is not only about the India, all the countries during the early stage of development are accepting, following like these means to produce the local domestic producers, the local producers through the variety of means. So the trade barriers, how works here, we have seen. We are looking about the liberalization, how this liberalization brought the globalization strong, that we will are seeing. This we have seen the background. Before 1990, there was no liberalization accepted by the India for the foreign trade and foreign goods, because to protect the Indian producers, to avoid competition from the foreign goods or the MNCs. It was the policy followed by the Indian government. The picture is changed around 1991. Some far-reaching changes in a policy were made in India. The policies changed. The government decided that the time had come for Indian producers to compete with producers around the globe. The Indian government decided, adopted some different policies, and it was considered now the Indian producers are able to compete to the foreign producers. That is why this policy is accepted. Because when competition is there, that time only the quality can be increased. So Indian government decided to improve the performance of the Indian producers and improve the quality of the Indian producers. That is why the decision is taken. What decision is taken? That was supported by powerful international organizations. The decision is supported by the international organization. What is the decision? We will see here. Thus, barriers for foreign trade and foreign investment were removed to large extent. The barriers which were for the foreign trade and foreign investment, which were early of the 1990s, were removed in 1991 with the GATT agreement. This is the GATT agreement which allowed the Indian market to the foreign investors. This meant that goods could be imported and exported easily, and also foreign companies could set up factories and offices here. Due to removing the restrictions, what happened here? The goods can be imported easily and export easily. The foreign companies can come in India and could set up their factories and offices in the country, anywhere, wherever they want. This happened in 1991. So this allowing to the foreign investors in the 1991 signing the GATT agreement given strength to the globalization in the country. So this liberalization, this removing the restrictions is the one way to give strength to the globalization. Removing barriers or restrictions set by the government is what is known as the liberalization. The liberalization is meaning here given. Removing of the barriers which set by the government, that is known as the liberalization. I hope you are understanding the meaning of liberalization. Removing barriers or restrictions. In the early period when India got independence, that time trade barriers were there. And when these trade barriers were removed in 1991, that period is called, or that action is called liberalization. The restrictions or barriers which set by the government were removed. That is the liberalization. With liberalization of trade, businesses are allowed to make decisions freely. Due to this liberalization, the trade and businesses were allowed to make their decisions free. Government restrictions are not remain now more. Freely about what they wish to import or export. It given freedom to the businesses, what to import or what to export, because the restrictions by government were removed. The government imposes much less restrictions than before and is therefore said to be liberal. Government in earlier period were keeping high restrictions, but now government is keeping very less restrictions or low restrictions. That is why it is called government become liberal for the businesses, trades by the foreign companies. In this way, we have studied in this point how the liberalization given strength for the globalization.